Hey guys, TheKamsh here. Today we're going to be talking about Fatigue Mage. This was a deck that was very popular a while back. A lot of people were playing it. Kalento hit rank 1 with it, Legend. It was really strong, and then people sort of stopped playing it because the meta shifted. But I think the deck can still be quite strong, and we're going to try out Emperor Thorus in it as well, since the card Emperor Thorson is pretty busted and pretty synergistic with the deck. So we'll try to play the deck and see how it fares in today's meta, since almost no one plays it nowadays. It's also something more diverse if you like being the person playing the wacky deck, and it's a very fun deck to play. I think it's my favorite deck to play in Hearthstone. So we're going to talk about some of the card choices. The deck has pretty similar cards no matter what version of Fatigue Mage you're playing. The core is most of the deck. There are a few flex slots where we get to make our own decisions, but a lot of the cards are predetermined. So we have two Frost Bolts, really good removal, can help stall like a bigger creature. It doesn't have to always kill something. Like you can Frostbolt a Doctor Boom and then Flame Strike later to clean it up. So it helps stall big creatures. It's removal, and it can also be used to face if we get our opponent low. If they start fatiguing and they're at a pretty low life total, we can Frostbolt them to win the fatigue race. And we then have two Doomsayer. It's a free board clear with any of our freeze cards like Frost Nova, Cone of Cold, Blizzard. If our opponent doesn't have a silencer or removal spell, we can also just play it on turn 2 or 3 or 4 when our opponent probably can't kill it. And we just get to wipe their board, and then when it passes back to us, we can start playing things similar to the Freeze Mage principle of Doomsayer. And then we can also Echo Medivh, duplicate it, play like 2 at once, or play one every turn just to stall out our opponent. At worst, this will get silenced, but if they have to clear it manually, like with their creatures, it gains you 7 life. So it's a really strong stall mechanic as well as board clear. Then we have two Explosive Sheep. This is a really good clear against aggressive decks or token strategies like Shaman or Paladin. This card is very good against. We can ping it ourselves to activate it and clear everything. It can also be used in conjunction with some of our bigger board wipes, and then it'll clear the board for a 6, for example, with Sheep and Flame Strike. Most of the time we just ping it, but sometimes we can let it stay on board for a turn, then run it into one of our opponent's creatures to get the extra point of damage. And it's a very strong board clear. Also, if we duplicate it or Echo of Medivh it, we can play like 4 Sheeps at once, then ping to get 8 damage entire board clear, which is very strong. So it's a very good and synergistic card with the deck, and it helps us survive the early game, but can also be useful in the late game, so a very powerful card there. Next we have Duplicate. We usually want to be duplicating our Cold Light Oracles or Death Lords to mill our opponent out. But duplicating Doomsayers or Sheep is good because we get to clear the board more times or more efficiently. Duplicating BGH can be good against Control Warrior or Handlock. And then things like Healbot, Belcher help us heal or stall more if they're duplicated. Thorson makes everything cheaper. And Alexstrasza, is a good card to have duplicated just because we can heal ourselves up multiple times and it's an 8/8 body. But with this deck, you have to be careful what you duplicate, so you have to be careful what you play on the board and sort of pick and choose what you want extra copies of depending on the matchup. But it's good with whatever creature you duplicate, although you're most often going to use it with Cold Light and Deathlord to mill your opponent out. So then we have two Frost Nova. Again, it's the clear with Doomsayer. But sometimes we just freeze our opponent's minions for a turn to help develop some of our other cards, like secrets like Duplicate or Cold Light Oracles and Echo. So sometimes we just Frost Nova to stall and try to stay alive. We can also use it to stall and try to draw into something if we have no other options left. So it's not just a 5 mana 2 card combo to clear. Both cards can be used independently pretty well. So then we have a Big Game Hunter. Playing a 1 of just because almost all decks will have targets, and then against decks with multiple targets, we can get some pretty big blowouts by Echo, Medivhing, and duplicating. Also, this deck needs Big Game Hunter more than some other decks do, since Deathlord can give our opponent a big creature fairly early. Big Game Hunter is a really good recovery mechanism for that. And we have two Cold Light Oracle as the core card of the deck. Basically, we want to get as many copies of this as we can with Duplicate and Echo of Medivh. And then stay ahead of our opponent on cards, since our Deathlord is pulling cards from our opponent's deck, and almost all decks have innate card draw, and we're playing no card draw other than Cold Light Oracle, which is symmetrical. So we want to copy this as many times as possible and draw a lot of cards. And once our opponent gets the fatigue, playing this will kill them very quickly, since fatigue damage stacks in sums. So 5 fatigue will deal 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 damage, which is quite a bit. So basically, our goal is to play these as late as possible. Sometimes you have to play them early to refuel, but we want to play them as late as possible so that we can not give our opponents cards until they either overdraw or go to heavy fatigue. And you also want to be careful about playing this card until you have a duplicate or echo castable out to protect them, because if both of these get killed, then it's kind of hard. It's harder to win. And then we have two Death Lords. This is a very strong card against both aggressive and mid-range strategies. It's a little bit worse against things like Control Warrior, where they can kill it fairly easily. But this is a great stall card. It's a huge roadblock, 2/8 for only 3 mana with Taunt. Helps stall out our opponent. A lot of the time, the creature it gives them will be negligible just because we can clear it with AoE. And also, the creature it gives them is pulled from their deck, so it puts them closer to being fatigued and helps mill them. So Deathlord's another core card of this deck. Duplicating Deathlord can be good in a lot of matchups. You usually play this even against things like Control Warrior, even when they can kill it, just because you want to get those cards out of their deck and then kill them. But this card is weaker against those strategies and a lot better against the aggressive decks. Against Face Hunter, for instance, you usually just win by playing Deathlords and heal bots and not even fatiguing them. So then we have two Cone of Cold. Some Fatigue Mage lists play varying amounts of AoE. We're playing the full amount of all of them just because we want to be prepared and be able to control our opponent's board while developing our win conditions. So Cone of Cold, it's usually going to freeze most, if not all, of your opponent's board. It can be used as a sort of lesser Frost Nova with Doomsayer. It can also be used for damage. The damage is important since we're playing a lot of things like Blizzard and Flame Strike. The damage we can, for instance, Cone of Cold, and then next turn Flame Strike for a total of 5 damage, and our opponent's minions will never have attacked us since we froze them and then killed them. So it's good with other AoE, it's good with Doomsayer, and it's just another good stall mechanic. We have two Echo of Medivh. It's another pretty core card. Lets us, develop our board with Cold Light, Doomsayer, Sheep, Healbot, etc., and then put more copies of those cards in our hands so we can continue clearing the board and making our opponent overdraw or fatigue. We do have to be a little bit careful with this card, just so if we have a pretty big board with things like Cold Light, since you usually want to play this after Cold Light, it'll put those cards in your hand, and you might overdraw and burn cards. So just be aware of that. Sometimes it's right to burn a card, especially if you have most of your pieces in hand and you want to get off a big Echo. But be aware that this card can lead to you burning cards occasionally. So then we have a one of Polymorph, just because we want to be able to kill things like Ysera and other things that are pretty hard to kill with damage, like Ancient of War, that BGH doesn't hit. It can also be used on things like Ragnaros when we don't have a BGH in hand. So it's sort of a catch-all. We have a one of just in case. It's pretty useful. Worst case scenario, it'll kill like a 5 or 6 drop, which is still fine. Against Face Hunter, it's usually going to be a pretty dead draw, so you want to mulligan it and try not to get it. But it's still a decent-ish removal spell. Next we have Antique Healbot. We're playing 2 of those. Pretty self-explanatory. We want to heal up. We can take a lot of early aggression from some of the aggressive decks and even mid-range decks if we don't draw our board clears. And we can duplicate this or Echo Medivh it to heal for a lot. And it also helps us beat a higher life total than our opponent when we go into fatigue, if we go into fatigue pretty much at the same time. So it helps us win that race as well. It's a very good card in the deck. It's also a body against things like Face Hunter just to beat down with when we can't always win with fatigue. We have 2 Belcher, a great stall mechanic. It's a very solid body, leaves behind another taunt when it dies. Duplicating and echoing it is really annoying for our opponent. And once again, it can just sort of be used as a beatdown creature if we're trying to win that way instead of fatiguing. We have a 2 Blizzard. This is both a great damage board wipe, and it freezes all our opponent's creatures. Pretty common play in this deck, especially against things like Druid, where they play a lot of 6 health minions, is Blizzard. Then their minions can't attack, they pass back to us, and then we Flame Strike on curve. It's a very powerful board wipe, also helps us stall by freezing. Just a very strong card in general. Next we have Emperor Thaurissan. This card it was only released like a week ago, but this card is already in a lot of decks. It's in most mid-range and control decks and combo decks. Just the mana that it gives is very powerful, and our deck's usually going to have a pretty significant amount of cards in our hands since we don't usually play a ton of them in the early game. And reducing the cost on like Cold Light Oracles and Echo of Medivhs makes for some pretty crazy turns. So the card is very powerful even if it dies immediately, and a lot of the times when it does die immediately, it's going to gain us 5 health since most people will use damage-based removal to kill it. So it's both stall mechanics, since it basically has taunt, they have to kill it, and it gives us a bunch of mana to do all the crazy things that this deck can do. Next we have 2 Flame Strikes. Again, pretty self-explanatory, really solid removal spell, bane of people playing Arena. But the 4 damage after things like Blizzard or anything else will allow us to clear most of our opponent's board without too much trouble. Doesn't make us rely as heavily on things like Doomsday or Frost Nova. And the card's just very strong, helps us survive long enough and clear our opponent's board to fatigue them. Finally, we have Alexstrasza. A lot of people don't play Alexstrasza in Fatigue Mage, but I like it just because against things like Face Hunter, this will heal us up and then give us an 8/8 to be down with it they can't deal with. And against things like Warrior, Druid, etc., it'll put them down to 15 when they start fatiguing, so we have to survive less turns of them drawing cards and taking damage. And again, they have to deal with it. And a lot of times people will just play their BG8 out against us, and then they'll have to spend a lot of resources dealing with the 8/8. So I like Alexstrasza in this deck. Some people play one Ice Block. I don't like that just because if your Ice Block gets popped and you're at 1, usually you're not going to be able to recover well enough like Freeze Mage can, or kill them in that time period like Freeze Mage can. So the Ice Block is sort of like, it doesn't do enough, and if it gets popped, you're usually losing the game anyway, so I don't like playing it. A lot of people play Illuminator as well, just to heal a little bit, but I think the heal bots cover that pretty well, as does the Alexstrasza, and I think this list has a good creature to spell ratio. Alright guys, those are some of my decisions with the deck. We're going to go ahead and jump into some games now. This deck's really fun to play, so I hope you guys enjoy.